Hello, TFO world, and welcome to another episode of Musician of the Week interviews. With me today is Dr. Andi Bragiel.
Bragiel, yeah.
Bragiel, oh, man. We'll keep it in. It's worth it. Yes. How are you doing, Andi?
I am doing well, Larkin. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. So, Andi, how long have you played with TFO?
This will be my third summer, which is crazy to me. I did it 2019 and then 2020 online, and yeah, back for another season. It feels like I just signed up and submitted my first round of excerpts yesterday. Like I remember it very vividly now. It's like third season. I'm like, cool.
I know, it's crazy. Like the time flies by, and it's always like a new fun thing every year.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've had like 2 years of two very different TFOs. But knowing that, do you have a favorite thing about TFO? And if so, what is it?
My favorite thing about TFO is definitely the people. Even though I'm generally like a very outgoing person, I have a lot of like anxiety about making new friends, especially like whenever I was driving out to Branson. It's like I knew I was gonna know like the bassoon section, at least some of them. But I'm like 2 weeks like hold up with these people, like, oh, I was like so nervous, and it's like instantly forever friends. As like we are all soulmates now. I don't make the rules. That's just how it is.
It's true,
And
yeah.
like instant forever friends, and yeah, definitely the people. Especially like you get to sit down with this group, and everyone plays really well. Like right away, I'm like, oh, it's like
yeah, it's like
so
everyone
nice.
is there for two things: music and friendship.
Yes, yes. And it's like magical little environment. Because I feel a lot of times with even with maybe like the professional, well, less I think with professional groups, but like especially with the last 2 years I was still affiliated with like university groups and doing performances like that in the context of school under that umbrella of academia and everything. Things get real stressful, like people show up unprepared or something, and you're always like, so and so did this today. I don't know if it's just because it's like the stress of school or whatever, but that's like it was never a thing at TFO. I was like, this is wonderful. This is so nice. I love all this.
Oh, I'm so glad you feel that way, specifically about the environment, because that was something I really wanted out of TFO, like in the foundations of it, and we like no one has brought that up yet. It's like when I wanted to start TFO because I liked the outlet of being away from teachers. I love my teachers. I loved all of them in school, and like 100% would do again, would recommend. But I think a critical part of one's education is like being able to do it on their own, and yeah.
And without that like pressure too of like if something ends up not going well, it's like everyone in TFO is like really supportive, like it's fine, it happens, or if it's like a bad rehearsal, or I don't know, if life happens, and it's not going to be like something you have to live with until it gets brought up in your lesson the next week, or
right.
It affects the parts for the next rotation or something like that, and it's like, so nice. It's very, very supportive, very positive, and just, very 10 out of 10 would recommend. Great energy in that group.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. So you obviously don't live in Branson during the year. So where are you living and working, and like what are you doing for the rest of the year?
So I am living in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been here for the last 4 years. I did my doctorate here and just stuck around. And I am currently a general music and choir teacher. And I only have my school's an intermediate school, so it's upper elementary, grades 5 and 6. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I have an awesome job. I love it. I'm very happy to be back working in K through 12 public school system. So yeah, it's been good. It's been an interesting year teaching, but we've gotten through it, and yeah. So
yeah, for sure. Speaking of an interesting year of teaching, can you kind of give us an idea of what it was like when the pandemic sort of hit and like what happened to you, your work, your momentum, and everything?
Oddly enough, whenever the pandemic hit and everything got shut down, and this might, I don't know how many other people have the same thing, but it was weirdly enough like a breath of fresh air to have everything shut down and everything go away and just to stay at home. Like for me specifically at CCM, the bassoon professor who we all like studied with and had gone specifically to CCM for like that's the reason we were all there. And he passed away very unexpectedly in February of 2020. My lecture recital was 3 weeks later, and the week after that everything got shut down. And so
Oh,
by the time everything got shut down, I'd had a month of just a very rough month. I had to like re-get new signatures, new committee members to fill his position. I had to get my lecture recital
oh my
together,
God.
which we got through. And it was just like it was just so much. So whenever like UC was just like, "Hey, y'all aren't coming back," I'm like, "Thank God." And I like left, and I'm like, "Bye." Okay, I was like a couple months away from the degree. I'm like, "See y'all later," and yeah, definitely. And then of course that shifted after once we realized it wasn't just going to be for, the 2 weeks or the 6 weeks or whatever. Then I started to it was like, oh crap, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah.
But definitely when it all hit, it was a much needed break just to be just to have that time to just I got done what I needed to, and then I would just like sleep the rest of the day, or I would take time away from. Like I didn't play for the longest time because I was like, all my stuff is done, and I would like to take a break from my instrument, and that was really nice for a while. So yeah, now we're this far into it, it's a much different view. But yeah, definitely at the time, I'm like, I needed this.
Yeah, for sure. So when it hit, you welcomed a relief from the rat race. But I mean, did it ever get to a point where you were like legitimately nervous about like your career, your community, and all that stuff?
Yeah, I would say probably by the time mid-April hit. And it was like I had gotten done with my DMA project and all of that, scheduled my oral comps. Like once all of that sort of passed through and I was done, I'm like, okay, that was a nice break. This is sort of a weird ending. Let's check on those job applications. And that's whenever it really hit that that's when the nervousness sort of hit because all of as you know, it's like whenever you're a little baby doctoral person entering this world of academia, it's like the big jobs get posted first. People from smaller schools may have those big jobs, adjuncts move up to the smaller schools, and it's like then throughout the summer it's like, okay, where are my adjunct jobs? And all these schools went on hiring freezes, and it's one
Yeah.
thing to get rejected from a job. It's a very, very different thing to just see all the jobs go.
Yeah,
So
no doubt.
that was really nerve wracking, because that wasn't and because it wasn't just me going through that. Since I am also married to another like DMA person, it was both of us going through it, and it's like all the freelancing went away, all the gigging went away, and it wasn't coming back, and we're like, um, crap.
Yeah.
So that was really, especially like I'd say middle of the summer. It's like this is not okay. So
Yeah.
that was
Like
hard.
being a professional musician is scary enough.
Yeah.
Um, and when your livelihood depends on your interaction with other humans and suddenly you
Mhm.
can't do it as simply put as possible, it just
Yeah. And it was really hard too to like communicate that with non-musicians because this is we're entertainment. We're this luxury commodity for the general population. And but most of us have been working at this. Like I remember I started playing the bassoon on my 13th birthday. I have that exact day in my head. So I have been working at this skill for 15 years, but I've been doing music since I was 5, and that's really all I ever wanted to do. So it's
Mhm.
like I have spent at least the last 15 years of my life dedicated to this craft, honing this ability and this talent, and
Mhm.
pouring everything into it. And then it all just goes away. It's like if someone got laid off from their job after 15 years, there'd be a lot of sympathy, a lot of empathy. But musicians have heard a lot of, I guess you're going to have to find a real job now. Like, no. I have a very, very finely honed skill and I want to do that. And I did. I tried like an office job and I made it 2 days.
Yeah, no,
I made it 2 days before I'm like, nope, I can't do it.
it's
Like,
terrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
ugh.
And I think, I mean, at least I'm, maybe it's like this in your community, maybe not, but I know here in Kansas City, I know people have really missed their live music scene and performing arts in general.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll come back around to that concept in a question or so. But COVID-19 wasn't the only like terrible thing that happened last year.
Yeah.
So were you impacted by any of the like civil unrest or like racial tensions happening in the US last year?
Yeah. During the summer, more so as an ally bystander and everything, and it got really heated in Cincinnati. Um, it was a lot to process then, and especially whenever I got my current job. I teach in an incredibly diverse school district. In my district, we have students representing 31 different countries, or no, 26 different countries with 31 spoken languages. So we're very, very diverse. So that's really impacted me, especially, walking in as a white educator and I'm teaching. The majority of my students are Black and Brown students, and to see, and especially because they're at the age where we're seeing, like, I'm seeing these, what's happening on the news, and I'm looking at my kids. I'm like, there's no difference. Okay, try to keep it together. It's
Yeah.
really, really hard because they see it too. Um, yeah, like um, after the incidents in January, it was like I'm watching that and I'm like thinking to myself, it's like I have to talk about that tomorrow. I have to talk about that tomorrow. I have to provide that space for my kids, and not even just everything else that they've gone through this year. It's like they don't deserve to have to carry that weight too. So that's been heavy to see and experience, and yeah, just knowing the hurt that they're going through is a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you could provide your students with a safe space for discussion and discourse.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and also with the part about music, and it's like there's like cliche like music is healing and everything, but it really is. Like for a lot of students, it was like their like an escape. And I'm like, that's what this needs to be this year. I was like, if we don't, I was like, if they don't retain any of their stuff I taught them about rhythms or notation or anything, it's like, but if they look back on music, they're like, hey, I had a really good time in music, and if I really enjoyed it,
Yeah,
that's I need to providing these students with some outlet for their own joy. I think is the biggest takeaway that
yeah,
any music educator can have. It's like you want to bring joy into your classroom and joy to your students because that's what they're going to carry with them for the rest of their life. Not if they can tell a quarter note from an eighth note. That's what's going to impact them.
yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. And this kind of brings me to my next question pretty succinctly. Do you think music and the arts will impact like our healing process as like on a national or on a global scale or otherwise?
I really think that it will, especially because we see so many artists and musicians who are now making statements, taking stands, and I think especially within classical music world, we're starting to really um, weed out a lot of the ugliness, for lack of a better word, that has been present for a very, very long time. And I also think too that because again we are this luxury commodity for the general population, or at least that's how we're seen. I also think too by becoming more outspoken and being more proactive, um, with making sure we have more diverse programming, and you're being actively anti-racist, and being more inclusive. I think you're also like eliminating the places for people who don't feel that way. You're eliminating the places for people to like hide that. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
this is how society needs to move. So if you do not want to move with it, then like, your arts and entertainment and your music, this isn't for you.
Right.
So I think, yeah, I think that that's going to be a very, very powerful way that music and the arts sort of helps us to heal from this.
Absolutely. And hopefully people see it as more of a necessity than
Mm-hmm.
a like 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 you were saying, a luxury commodity.
Yeah.
I am fancy. Dang it.
Like exactly. Very necessary.
Very necessary.
Necessary.
um, heck yes. Cool. So I think I always get to this question in interviews, and I think everyone knows the answer, but I still need to hear your take on it. Do you miss performing and teaching in person like the good old days?
Yeah, so much. Um, yeah, it was. I had a rehearsal for it's just like a reed quintet, but it was for a recital that had gotten canceled last spring. And I was a little nervous for it. And at the time, like also like a little annoyed because I was like, I'm not a student anymore. Why do I have to do this? Blah blah blah. Go into rehearsal, but then like the first like tuning note that I played with other people, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, oh, that's so good. That feels so good. It feels like I don't know, like, oh, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That is just, I did not know that music could feel that way anymore. So that was awesome. Teaching in person, my private students, my private bassoon students are both still virtual. Um, and while I don't miss having to travel to them, it is really nice to just like be home and I'm like, I'm like in a sweatshirt, like my hair up. I'm like, just log onto the computer. I'm like, okay, play for me. Sometimes I don't even get my instrument together. It's not necessary. So that part's been nice, but now that we're over a year teaching virtually, having a bassoon, trying to fit 4 feet of instrument into a camera frame and find out what their thumb's doing with like 9 different keys, I'm like,
That does sound like a nightmare.
like one of my students, like, I think I've gotten kind of lazy with flicking over the last year, and I'm like, I can tell if you could not do that, I can't enforce that. Like, I can't like put my little pencil there and be like, that key, that key, that key. Like,
Right.
so I cannot wait till I get back to, especially in the in-person bassoon lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, I can't wait until we get back to that. That'll be very, very nice. The in-person teaching for my full-time job, um, it was some of the virtual weeks were really nice. Attendance is not always great, but there's no commute. Classroom management is a breeze. It's just a lot of nice aspects to that. But at the same time, like getting back to actually teaching as a classroom and not being like by my computer, that was also very lovely. I'm like, I feel a real teacher again.
Yeah,
Ah, definitely miss
absolutely.
it.
So yeah, you do miss teaching and performing in person.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. And knowing this, and that TFO is still able to be in person this summer, what would it mean to you to perform in person with TFO this summer?
It would mean the world. I am so excited for this. Like whenever I was like, yes, that's happening. Like I think I signed my agreement that I think it was like literally like 5 minutes after the email hit. Like I was just right away. I was like, yes, 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 yes. Like I just agreed to everything and like cannot wait. Can't wait. I have the whole thing planned out. I was like, and I'm gonna like split the drive up into 2 parts. I'm gonna stay in St. Louis. I'm just gonna like relax for a little bit. Like I had the whole like I had it all planned because I just yeah.
Making
I
a trip out of it. I like it.
yes I and it's also nice too because I for this year was very very fortunate to have the full time employment. I'm like oh I can do that. I can take my time and not be worried. Like last summer Of course, it was virtual, but I know a lot of us last summer were kind of like, would normally have this source of income that went away.
Yeah.
So that's also, I've been very grateful for that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't wait for in-person TFO. I can't wait.
It's going to be great. And TFO, in-person TFO, can't wait for you.
Um,
It's going to be so great. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me, Andy. Um, may you continue to prosper and plan that most excellent road trip to TFO this summer. Can't wait to have you back.
yes, thank you.
Yes. And for those of you who are watching, stay tuned for more Musician of the Week episodes. Subscribe to our website for updates and to check the schedule for the summer's in-person TFO, TaneyComo Festival Orchestra.org. We can't wait to see you all there. And then